You know, I've talked about this before on here on this channel, but it's still kind of strange to really think about it. I mean, the fact that you see a lot of these triple X, NFSW, fanfic erotic stories, based on popular IPs that we grew up on as kids, and it really surprises you, like what characters get focused on. In this case, Tails is focused on a lot in these stories because basically, I guess folks view him as a ladies' man, if you know what I mean. And it doesn't matter, like what characters, what female characters get with him. It's like he's always the main target. For example, I reviewed and talked about the fanfic, the adult triple X fanfic, Southern Foxy 11. And that basically focused on Bunny and Tails, getting it on with each other because of the fact that Antoine did not want to basically get it on with Bunny himself because I guess of his, I guess you could say his stature, his manners, his personality or something like that. Even though they still loved each other, it's like he just could not bring himself to, basically give Bunny the satisfaction that she was hoping for. So what does she do? She goes straight to Tails, and Tails reluctant at first, even though he's aged up in the story to the appropriate age. Even though he's reluctant at first, he goes along with it. And it's not just Tails. It's not just Bunny either, I should say. It's also other female characters. For example, another story I talked about, my best friend's wife, focuses on Tails getting it on with Julie Sue. Because of the fact that Julie Sue has an urge that needs to be scratched, and basically Knuckles isn't delivering like he used to, so she decides, hey, Tails is going to stay with us for the week, help out, kind of be, a third member of the household. Why not take the opportunity throughout the week to have some fun? And again, even though Tails is a little reluctant, Julie Sue finds a way to ensure him, don't worry, nothing bad will come of this, when it's all said and done. In other words, telling him, don't worry, Knuckles will never find out. And, they proceed to, get it on. And we're left to, our imaginations to wonder what the rest of the week will be like for them, after this one, after the first intercourse between them. But it's not just them either. It's also some of the mothers of the characters. Like, for example, Bernadette Hedgehog from the Archie books. See, Bernadette in the Archie books is Sonic's mom. And she's one of the Robians, that gets restored back to flesh and blood, later on in the comics run. Thanks to an alien race known as the Beam. But ever since she got restored, she's been looked at as one of the top Sonic, I guess you could say, MILF waifus, if you will. Waifu, MILFs, or MILF waifus, what do you want to call it, by fans. I mean, heck, I did a video where I asked the question of, and if not talked about, why Alicia Acorn, Sally's mom in the comics, had become such a waifu since she made her debut in the comic, and I gave off various reasons why she basically became second to none, underneath vanilla, if you will. But Bernadette is not that far off either. Bernadette Hedgehog is not that far off either, especially when it comes to her being the one that gets chosen a lot, and I mean a lot, by fans to get it on with Tails. Now, I'm not going to deny and say that maybe I didn't suggest a story request-wise and everything a year ago or so between, that basically focuses on her and Tails. I'm not going to say I didn't, because I did. I'm not going to say what it is. You just have to see for yourself. And my recommendation is go to archiveofourown.org, or fanfiction.net, and go to the writer Made in Nowhere. That's one word, Made in Nowhere, and you'll find it. You will find it. It's probably one of the only ones there. And if you use archiveofourown.org, if you use that, you could go to Maiden Nowhere's page, and he will have basically a chapter, a chapter's worth of what he calls smut one-shots. That's right. The folder is the chapter thing. The folder is known as smut one-shots. Go to that and just look down, and you'll see exactly which one it is. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. But on top of that, there are other stories involving her as well. For example, I think I've mentioned this before, Miles and the MILFs. As I've talked about, I think, in a previous audio video, in this story, Tails basically is getting it on with all the older women, mothers, if you will, the MILFs, around New Mobotropolis. That is what he's doing. That is what he is doing. He's getting it on with them, starting, of course, with Bernadette Hedgehog, doing it twice with her, and seemingly, I think, they're on the verge of doing it a third time in the story once the story continues. Doing it with Vanilla the rabbit, and then recently, in the more recent chapter, Alicia Acorn, Sally's mom. Now, what's interesting about this is all three scenarios have a different reasoning, or have a different kind of plot to them, or twist. For example, Bernadette is already infused with a seed from her husband that was frozen in chronogenic state, or whatever, however you pronounce it, cryonic state, we'll put it that way, cryonic state, has been frozen in cryonic state for years. So all Tails has to do basically is just, scratch her itch, if not provide, I guess you could say, the jumpstart that the seed needs to, really take off and be fertilized. He just needs to, provide the jumpstart. And it's not just once. He does this a couple of times, if you will. And again, like I said, the third time looks like it's on the verge. Vanilla, on the other hand, this is because Kareem overhears what's going on, finds out what's going on, relays it to her mom, and let's just say the rest is history. But the end result is that apparently Vanilla ends up basically being fertilized by Tails, but ensures Tails, hey, you don't have to worry about anything because no one will know. And even though that calms Tails' nerves, it's still it's still kind of nerve-wracking to him, or still a little making him unsure about what he did, about what potentially could come of this, and people eventually finding out. And then, of course, like I said, the recent one is actually where he takes command. He takes charge, because Alicia Acorn, she's going through a similar thing, but she is more kind of reluctant at first until Tails helps her get into it. If you will, he finally helps her get into it, and then the rest is history. And now it looks like in the next chapter, we're going to be having Tails have some intimacy with Mina Mongoose. Mina Mongoose's mom, Isabel Mongoose. And from the hints of it, it looks like it's also going to involve Lala Lee, Knuckles' mom, is going to get involved. And I think even Queen Alina's getting involved. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. But I can guarantee it has to coincide with Tails getting it on with his mom. That's got to be the last stop that they do to close out the story. But getting back to Bernadette, though, this story and the one that I kind of requested are not the only ones. There's one called My Son's Keeper, where basically, in this alternate universe, both Jules Hedgehog and Amadeus, Prower, Rosemary's husband, and Jules Hedgehog, Bernadette's husband, have passed away. And it's up to Tails, basically, to fulfill those needs. And it looks like it's just going to be Bernadette until pretty much Bernadette, knowing Rosemary for as long as she has, knows that Rosemary would like to have a piece of this as well. And let's just say the rest is history. And both not only end up having simultaneously the time of their life, if you will, with Tails, and even making out with each other in the process of having the time of their lives. But basically, they are now in a three-way relationship, 2 wives, 1 husband-like relationship, where the end result is, well, let's just say Tails is going to be a proud papa of 2 step-siblings in a very unique way. But then we get to the one that just came out today, called My Best Friend's Mother. And it has a similar premise. If you will, to the one I just mentioned. But here, not only has Jules passed away, but he is no longer around, not just to love his wife and be there for her, but he's mostly not around to scratch her sexual itch. And one day, Tails decides, because he was asked to do so, to come over and debug Bernadette's, I guess you could say, debug Bernadette's computer of viruses, and giving it overall protection from any future viruses. However, the twist, ladies and gentlemen, is all this takes place. After Jules passes and everything, Tails going over to Bernadette's house to debug her computer and give it overall protection and everything for future viruses. This all takes place during what is known as the heat season. That's right. Basically, every character, male and female, is in heat in the story. They are in heat in the story. And what happens is that obviously it's hinted at that Sonic does find his mom attractive, but he's in a relationship with Sally, and Sally right now is going through her own heating experience, is going through her own heat where she needs Sonic to satisfy her. So Sonic has to go over there and satisfy her all the time and try to fight the urges of not doing it with his mom, because he's also going through the heat, and he has to keep it inside of him, if you know what I mean, until he gets to Sally. So what does this leave Bernadette to do? Well, again, like I said, Jules is no longer around, and she needs someone to scratch her sexual itch. And she tries her best, in her own unique way, with the toys and stuff that she has. She tries in her own unique way with the toys and stuff that she has. And it isn't until, like I mentioned, Tails comes over to fix her computer, debug it, and, from viruses, and, give it an overall protection from future viruses, that basically things take a turn for the intimate. Because while Tails is doing this, Bernadette goes into her room and tries to basically relieve herself, because she's also in heat. And what's interesting for Tails is this is his first experience in heat season. Yeah. So you can only guess what happens. And if you guess exactly what happens, you're right. Because what occurs is that she is trying to relieve herself so much, or Tails is, debugging her computer and installing the antivirus program and all that, that it's doing this, that he hears something. He hears something, coming from upstairs. So he goes upstairs asking if everything's okay, if she needs anything. And she's like, oh, no, everything's fine. And Tails is like, okay, I'll leave you alone. Let me know if you need anything, or I'll let you know when I'm done with the computer. And he goes back downstairs. And the reason, though, Bernadette is making these noises, trying to relieve herself, you know what I mean, is she's basically fantasizing about Tails. She's fantasizing about him. Now, we can only assume Tails is of age here. We can assume that. He's of age. And because, let's be honest, you can't be in your first heat, if you will, if you're not at age, I guess, when it comes to the Sonic universe, or the multiverse of Sonic universes, if you know what I mean. So we can assume he's of age. So anyway, that's what's going on. Bernadette is fantasizing about him. So after she kind of temporarily, relieves herself, she changes and goes downstairs to check on Tails. But as she's approaching downstairs, she hears a noise, like moaning, if you will. And when she gets to a certain point where Tails doesn't see her, but she sees him trying to, quote unquote, relieve himself. And he's doing it by fantasizing about her and her being in tight yoga pants, because the excuse she gave him was she was doing yoga. So seeing this and realizing that they both want to be with each other, or both want to basically fulfill each other's fantasies, she decides to go back upstairs, put on some tight clothing, if you will, with a few exceptions not being, on her, go downstairs, approach Tails, and the moment Tails sees her, he thinks he's getting caught and everything. She's going to scold him until he sees what she's wearing. And then, pretty much you go from there. And, of course, Tails is unsure about what's about to happen, because he doesn't want Sonic, his best friend, his bro, if you will, to find out. But she assures him, don't worry, he won't find out. And let's just say the dominoes start to fall right then and there. The dominoes start to fall, one by one, until basically we get to the moment of moments, if you know what I mean. Because Tails, of course, this being his first season of heat, allows himself to succumb to these desires, to the heat, to the heat's manipulation and these desires that he is now developing. And let's just say things get really wild and frisky and intimate and erotic with these two. There is no doubt. Because what happens is that during their moment, if you know what I mean, an animalistic side, the more dominant, I guess you could say predatorial side, the more claiming, predatorial, marking side, animalistic side, if you will, of Tails starts to, overtake his mind, his reasonable senses. And let's just say he just, during the moment, takes control and really goes to town. And Bernadette is more than happy to, join in with him when it happens. I mean, there are moments where he, does a few slappings of a lot of slapping of the rear. And she's saying things like, slap me more and make me into such and such for you and everything. And it's like, holy smokes. It's like, what are these writers turning not only Tails into, but Bernadette into as well? Because what happens then is that it's because they're getting so into it. They're getting so into this moment that neither are realizing what the consequences could be. Well, at least Bernadette probably knows. But Tails, because that animalistic side of him to mate, mark, claim, dominant, be predatorial, if you will, is overriding his senses, he pretty much, doesn't realize that what he's about to do is going to have some future consequences within the next 9 to 10 months in the continuity. Because what happens, is basically at the end, is he unloads within Bernadette, and unloads in a way that basically can ensure, possibly, that within the next 9 to 10 months, she's not only going to be a mother again, but he's going to be a father, and Sonic's going to have a step-sibling. Yeah. And what's funny about this is that after the sessions, Tails' mind finally clears up, and it dawns on him what he just did. But then Bernadette kisses him and reassures him that she wanted it to happen. that she wanted it to happen, and Tails has to remind her, but I thought you told me you didn't want Sonic, that Sonic wouldn't find out. I thought you told me he wouldn't find out. And Bernadette just laughs that off and says, don't worry, I'll handle him. And then she explains why she wanted this to happen. Why she wanted Tails to do what he did. Why she basically wanted him to claim her, mark her as his own. And it's basically because she wants them to be lovers, so that they can enjoy each other on a nightly basis, if you know what I mean. And she asked him if he wants that to happen, if he wants to be her lover or not. And he thinks about it. And it's like, you know what? Because basically he comes up with he's thinking about it, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to do that. And he doesn't answer her with words. He just smiles sweetly at her and nods. And then all of a sudden she's like, okay, that's all I want to know. She basically reverses positions on him, if you will, to where she's on top. And she's like, time for round 2. And Tails is like, round 2? And she's like, yeah, it's heating season. And it's going to take more than just one round to end this. And she tells him they're going to keep going into the night, right, to the point that he makes her into I'm not going to say the word, for his, white essence. We'll put it that way. For his white essence. And then basically that's how the story kind of ends. Well, it kind of ends because Sonic then wants to know, okay, Sonic's kind of worried. He hasn't heard from his mom. He hasn't heard from Tails for about a week or two. So he wants to know what's going on. And when he finally does talk to his mom, she just happens to be in the middle of something that he's not aware of. Because you see, he's looking for Tails, but he doesn't aware that while his mom answers the door and everything to talk to him, he's not aware that Tails is kind of, there with her, doing a little bit of satisfying for Bernadette, but I'm not going to say any more than that. And once she assures him, okay, don't worry, he's fine, he's probably taking care of himself, he knows what to do, which kind of calms Sonic's nerves, Sonic then tells her, okay, fine, no problem, thanks for letting me know, I got to get back to the castle because Sal's about to wake up, and, because, like I said, in this story, it's heating season, so he has to go back before she wakes up and still satisfy her. So after Sonic leaves and everything, you see Tails basically come up from where he was, and Bernadette being playful with him, saying you almost got us caught, and then Tails has to playfully counter her by saying, you're one to talk and everything, and she's like, yeah, that's true. And let's just say things proceed from there, and they just get so wild and extremely intimate and NFSW erotic in all parts of the house and all furniture of the house that, you just leave it up to your imagination of what takes place afterwards, because that's how the story ends. But yeah, it seems that if we were to rank the top 3, waifu MILFs in Sonic that get portrayed in a very erotic manner, if you know what I mean, the top 3, Vanilla, Alicia, Bernadette. That's pretty much it. And I don't think anybody could deny that. But yeah, this is a story, this new one that just came out, along with the other ones I mentioned, really puts Sonic's mom from the Archie books in a light to where you're like, damn. It's like, what is it going to take for this girl to be satisfied? And again, when it comes to these kind of stories, you kind of like, you wonder to yourself, well, how can this be justified? And again, these authors, they give reasonings, they give actual legit reasonings of how they can be justified. But anyway, it definitely shows that Bernadette is, up there as the third most, requested, third most utilized Sonic waifu, a MILF waifu, if you will, in in the franchise, period. End of story. So let me know what your thoughts are, though, guys. Have you read any of these kind of stories? Which one of them do you think emphasizes Bernadette the most at this level? And let me know how you feel about characters being portrayed like this. That even though it's, just fantasy, fanfic, fans just doing their own thing. Let me know down below in the comments as well as the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. And until next time, guys, I am out.